AccessTalks, a series of seminars organised by postdoctoral and predoctoral members of the TransMedia Research Group. TransMedia Catalonia is a research group at Universitat Autònoma de Barcelona. A bold circular logo shaped like a purple speech bubble features the word access in large yellow letters and talks in bold white below it. Underneath it says, by TransMedia Catalonia in smaller white text. At the top, a simple white figure with outstretched arms inside a circle represents inclusivity and accessibility. AccessTalks, Seminar 2, Democratic Access to Information, Exploring Challenges and Opportunities. An initiative with the support of the ENACT project, Easy to Understand News for Collaborative Transformation, a project funded by the European Union.
So once again, welcome everyone and thank you for all of the attendees, for the speakers and for those of you who might be watching from home on YouTube to our second seminar as part of the AccessTalks initiative, which is, it's an initiative led by the research group TransMedia Catalonia by predoctoral and postdoctoral students. It's a research group at the Autonomous University of Barcelona dealing with topics about media and media accessibility. This is a series of webinars, and this one will be, as mentioned, about democratic access to information. I would also like to thank the ENACT project on Easy to Understand News. This is an European project for giving us support in this webinar. And I will not be talking too much about the project since one of our speakers, Andrei Tomazin, I think you will mention a bit more about it later. But you might be wondering who this stranger talking to you is. Well, my name is Mario Cuitavi Martin. I'm a researcher at TransMedia Catalonia working on Easy to Understand News within the ENACT project. And just to briefly describe myself, I'm a Mediterranean man, about 25 years old. I have dark short hair, brown eyes, and right now I'm wearing blue square glasses and a matching dark blue sweater, and I'm talking to you from my living room. But if we get down to the nitty-gritty, I think the question is why we are here today and why this conversation matters. And I believe we all can acknowledge that access to information is a fundamental human right. But in order for information to be accessible, it should meet a series of criteria. So, for example, it should be retrievable. People should be able to access it. People should be able to perceive it. This means that, for example, people with visual disabilities or auditory disabilities might need accessibility services, such as audio description or subtitles for the deaf and hard of hearing to be able to perceive it. But information should also be comprehensible. Here we need to think about people who might process information cognitively in a different way, such as people with cognitive disabilities. It is estimated that there are around 20 million people in Europe with cognitive disabilities and more than 100 million people in the European Union that have a disability of different kinds. So this is why accessibility services such as easy language, which we will be talking about later, can help make information more comprehensible. Information should also be linkable, meaning that new information, new knowledge should be relatable to the one that we already possess, because we know that we build on previous knowledge. That's how we can understand new information. It should be acceptable. And this has to do with a variety of aspects. But for example, if we think about some accessibility services that might be stigmatized or viewed as solely used for particular target groups, when in reality they might come in handy or might be useful for a wider audience, such as easy language. Easy language could help you, not only people with cognitive disabilities, but also if you are under stress, overwhelmed, or really exhausted in emergency situations when we don't process information in the same way. If we overcome this barrier, this way of thinking. That is why we are here today as well, to raise awareness. This information can be used by other people who might benefit from it. And if all of these criteria are met, then information can be action-oriented, meaning that we can make informed decisions. This is important because access to information not only allows us, as we know, to know what happens around in the world, in your town, in your city, but also to hold institutions accountable and to act on the information that we have. For example, to express our views and thoughts, but that has to do with freedom of speech. In today's information society, there are many challenges. There are also many opportunities, but we need to think about accessibility to make it actually beneficial for everyone. So it is, as we know, a highly digitalized and automatized society, meaning that I think we all usually go on the internet to get information. There are a myriad of resources. However, they're not. That's why media and digital literacy are important. Data from last year from the European Union says that only 56% of adults from 16 years old to 74 years old have basic digital skills, meaning that there are many people who don't have those basic digital skills, and there is definitely a digital gap that needs to be overcome. So this space that could be a way to promote participation for everyone and global connectivity is not really perfect. We need to think about accessibility and to overcome this inequality here, and to make sure that people are aware that not everything that is on the internet is trustworthy, as we know, to avoid the spreading of misinformation and fake news, especially when we think about how everything happens so fast in today's society, how we want to find information at one click, and so on. So what we would like to think about and to address today is what are the obstacles that make information inaccessible, and how institutions such as broadcasters, or in this case the European Union, the European Parliament, can try to overcome them and make information accessible to everybody. I would like to invite you all to put on your accessibility glasses and see the world a bit differently, so we can discuss about how we can try to promote understanding and trust instead of creating noise and confusion. And I would have liked us to discuss a bit more about it. So we prepared this Mentimeter so we could talk about the challenges and opportunities when it comes to access to information, but I think we're a bit tight on time from my side. So I would sadly I would sadly have to skip it. But today we have presentations from different speakers. First of all, we will hear from Andrej Tomazin, who will talk about easy to understand news at RTV Slovenia and other European organizations, as well as other accessibility services at their organization and how it can help accessing information. And his presentation will be followed by Patricia Peinado Serranos on audiovisual translation and other accessibility services at the European Parliament, related to their accessibility services. I would like to point out that we will have plenty of time after the presentations to make questions and discuss and make comments. So while our speakers are presenting, you can already start thinking about something that you would like to ask, or something that you maybe would like to delve deeper into. But without further ado, I would like to welcome Andrej Tomazin and thank you again for participating. So the floor is yours whenever you want.
So thank you all for having me. I think it's really important to discuss accessibility in different contexts, different environments. Maybe for the starters, as Mario did, my name is Andrej Tomazin. I am dressed in black. I'm a rather dark person with dark hair, dark facial hair also. I wear glasses. I have tattoos on my left hand. And I've been part of the access services at RTV Slovenia for more than 5 years. And before that, I was a journalist for quite a few years at both radio and TV media outlets. My background is actually in linguistics, and at this moment, I'm also doing my PhD research on spoken communication of people with intellectual disabilities at the university in Ljubljana. So that's that about myself. In regard to access services, I have worked mainly with audio description, a bit less with subtitles for deaf and hard of hearing and sign language interpretation. But recently I have been focusing for a few years mostly on easy language and easy language news in different formats. So today I'll try to share how we at RTV Slovenia approach easy to understand language, what is being done in Europe, like from a broader point of view, and how this connects to access and inclusion more broadly, as is the title of our today's meeting. So let me just see. RTV Slovenia, maybe for the starters, is the National Public Service Media Organization, and accessibility is an important part of it. We provide sign language interpretation, subtitles. Those are pre-prepared live, and since the last year, we also have automatic subtitles. We have audio description and audio subtitles, which some of you might know as spoken subtitles. And more recently in 2020, that's already 5 years ago, we added news in easy to understand language to this list. Maybe an interesting trivia in regard to our access services. Just last month, our TV program named Prisluhnimo tišini, which is in English, Listen to Silence, which is fully adapted for people with hearing impairments, celebrated its 45th anniversary. So since October 1980, its content has been presented in Slovenian Sign Language, subtitled and voiced, making it accessible to deaf, hard of hearing, and also hearing viewers alike. And that started actually a year before the BBC's See and Hear program. And as far as we know, this makes the Slovenian show the first of its kind in Europe in public media sphere. So to get back, in general, we try to make information accessible through different channels and for different needs. Maybe what is easy to understand language and what are easy to understand news for those who might be new to this theme, to this topic? Well, the shortest explanation would be that it is any language variety which enhances comprehensibility. And within this explanation, we have easy language, which is the most simplified variety at the end of the spectrum, so to say, and is meant for people with reading comprehension difficulties, be it on one side, people with intellectual disabilities, or those who are learning a certain language as a second or a foreign language. Then we have also plain language, which is for general readers, but written so that everyone can find, understand, and use information easily. In our work at RTV Slovenia, we use the broad term easy to understand news because there is a certain stigma that could arise from using easy language, which is the Slovene language connected to trivial literature, to trivial things. So we didn't want to encourage people to think of it like that. So what do we do at RTV Slovenia? in regard to easy to understand language. We've started our Easy News production in 2020 at first as a weekly service. And our first news item was actually published on the day the epidemic of coronavirus was declared in Slovenia. And this certainly gave us quite a problem with how to present numbers, because as you can remember, there were numbers and statistics just flying around, so that was the first problem, or one of the largest problems we faced at that moment. But well, facing this problem and overcoming it, then in 2021, the Easy to Understand News grew into a daily service. To explain a bit, about 1/3 of the content covers Slovenian current affairs, and the rest includes things like special topics on elections, on referendums, and then maybe some more soft news such as recipes, trivia about Slovene culture, and travel tips. So it's actually a mixture of informative, useful, and let's say lighter content, but always written with the same goal. So to convey the most important news in Slovenia on a certain day, and to make this information clear and understandable with a pinch of lighter content. This year, we also started simplifying audiovisual news items once a week, but as always, I guess we never actually stop thinking, experimenting, and working on different ideas and formats. So what's going on behind the scenes? There are a lot of things happening simultaneously to what you see in public and what's being done, as I said, behind the scene in regard to easy to understand language. We are at this moment producing different pilot versions in different audiovisual formats, in text, audio, and video, for different news genres, for example, for typical daily news shows, and the example on your left is a consumer affairs show. So we are trying to see what works best and what can be done in this regard. Alongside this, we are developing work processes for each format, and we always try to collect feedback from target groups while working on new things. And we feel that the feedback is essential. It tells us whether something is really clear and easy to follow, not just in theory, but in real use with people who actually view or read the news we produce. And at the same time, we learn firsthand about user preferences and the ways they access, and view or listen to the news, as I said before. Research and testing with users is an ongoing process at RTV Slovenia. For easy language, we have two different ways to test. One is working with a person with an intellectual disability whom we work with on a weekly basis, discussing, commenting on, and validating some of the content we produce. And the other one is working in larger groups where we test pilots and some of the already existent content. So it's like a two-way testing. We continuously test with users to understand how people perceive and process information. And we try not to make it like a one-time project, but we want it to truly become part of our everyday work, even though sometimes takes a lot of time to make it work. One of the key findings, for example, with audiovisual, easy to understand news, is that the same rules don't apply as for written easy language. Not only when producing it from our point of view, but also from how users and facilitators are testing it because what we found out, they also need to find a different, let's say, internal methodology to provide us with content, because they're just not used to watch news shows in easy to understand language, but are mostly used to test the written content. And since this is organized by UAB as the university, of course, here we are working with the user preferences. It's not a strict scientific methodology, so just keep that in mind. It's just, it's not set in stone, but we've learned quite a few things that are really interesting. So, for example, what we learned is that spoken speed should be should be a bit slower, but then again, not too slow. Even news read at a standard tempo are understood better if there is a stable rhythm and a trained voice, rather than the news which are read slowly but without a stable rhythm. So, for example, if I would speak slow, I would do a lot of cadences and so on, a lot of pauses that would really be a big problem for the users in our tests. And this is really interesting because this slightly corresponds to also to what Marina researched in her PhD, where she found out that the comprehension in the context of easy language is not affected by variations in speech rate. So, for example, this is what we've learned from our firsthand, what is similar to what she learned from her scientific experiments. Other preferences that were mentioned include, of course, the use of simple words, short sentences, and news items covering one topic at a time with a clear structure, which is actually nothing too uncommon. We then had a lot of discussion about visuals and on-screen text. They certainly help a lot, but they said that we should only explain what's essential. And interestingly, some users found that too much textual explanation in narration, so in the voiceover of the news in audiovisual formats, can feel funny or unnecessary. So quite differently from the textual version, where we have a lot of explanations, in audiovisual content, this becomes, as they said, a bit silly. So this is something to take into consideration. And I think here the balance is the key. And I guess with strong support with the target users, we can get to the best possible content. Now I will just focus a bit on what's being done in Europe. I'll be short and then focus on the ENACT project. In this, what we are working, we're not alone. There's a lot of easy to understand news content in Europe. Many countries already produce easy language news. Some appear as online articles, as TV and radio items, and some as print editions. And this shows that the field is growing and there's a lot that we can learn from each other. I won't go through all the countries, but in short, the ones that are underlined in the slides are the ones that also produce audiovisual, and the ones without are mostly producing the textual. I might have missed some, but this is always growing list in Europe. So now coming to the ENACT project, which RTV Slovenia is coordinating and UAB is a part of it. ENACT, in short, connects experts from several EU countries, from Italy to Austria and Latvia, and from Slovenia to Spain, Catalonia, and looks at how easy to understand news is made across Europe. The idea first arose when we started producing news in easy to understand language at RTV Slovenia. And so there was no network for this, like no repositories of good examples. And we had to ask each broadcaster that we knew is producing something in easy to understand language, one by one, to see what their best practices are and what work processes stood behind this content. So the goal of the project, which is funded by the European Union under the Creative Europe program, was established to find out what works best, develop guidelines for producing accessible audiovisual news, and at the end build an online hub with examples and resources for organizations or people who will start doing something similar in the future. In 2024 and 2025, the INECT project mapped the current state of affairs in Europe, exchanged the knowledge between the partners, produced first recommendations and examples, and in 2026 we'll bring that closer to target groups with consultation sessions and then produce the main outputs, the online hub with examples, recommendations, and resources. This being done together with a few events to present the main finding, with the first one now coming up in May in Palermo, in Italy. So to finish off, why both easy to understand news and the INECT project are important, it's because many people still struggle to understand traditional news language, not only people with disabilities or those who learn a language, but also older adults and actually anyone who simply prefers clear and structured and easy to understand information. So together with the fact that the right to information is a fundamental human right, we believe that simplifying news content is essential for free opinion forming and inclusive democracy. So I would like to end on this note, and if anybody wants to ask anything, I think Mario said we'll have time at the end, but this is my email for any other questions or inquiries. So this is from my side all. Thank you very much for now.
Thank you, Andre, so much for your presentation. I might be, as you know, a bit biased being a part of the project, but I believe that what we are doing is very important to raise awareness, but also, as you said, to create a network where not only broadcasters, but also other associations, institutions, and especially end users, which you mentioned, how you work with end users to make sure and to find out their preferences and what works and what doesn't. It's very important. Then again, I might be a bit biased, but I think we're doing a good work here. Thank you. So I think now we can move on to Patricia's presentation on audiovisual translation at the European Parliament and accessibility. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mario. I will share my screen. And in the meantime, I will start by describing myself as you just did earlier. So I have brown long hair. I'm wearing black glasses and a red jumper, which happens to contrast with Luxembourg's cloud skies. So the topic of today is audiovisual translation at the European Parliament, and we will explore when and how does language meet accessibility. Just to briefly introduce myself, I've been a project manager at the subtitling and voiceover unit from Parliament's translation service for around 4 years, and we focus on producing subtitles, SDS subtitles, and voiceover, and we will explore a bit more in this presentation our services. On the agenda, we have 3 main sections. First, a brief introduction about who we are. Then a section about what we do, so our services, including subtitling and voiceover and some others. And a very brief reflection about future perspectives of what's ahead of us. And well, the last section about the questions and answers is a common one, so we can have questions for both presentations. So with all of this information, we can get started and talk a bit about who we are. So the European Parliament is a large European Union institution, and it is divided into different directorate general. Um, from the translation service, today I'm going to talk about the Directorate General for Translation, which is divided into smaller directorates. I belong to the one that is called Directorate for Citizens Language. The name was not chosen randomly. It's a way to honor the work towards citizens. And the mission of this directorate is to work in 3 formats, namely text, audio, and video, and to work into the 24 official EU languages to make information available and accessible in in the 24 official EU languages in as many formats as possible to cater for different needs. Now you might be wondering, how do we do this? We are equipped with a large team of language professionals ranging from translators, revisers, proofreaders, who are paired with technical teams, such as myself. I belong to the technical team of this subtitling and voiceover unit. And we are mostly based in Luxembourg. Here we have a facade of the main building in Luxembourg with the EU flags waving at the front. So this is a bit about who we are. And by now, maybe we have the impression that the European Parliament is a big institution, and there are many different accessibility initiatives, for example, in terms of digital accessibility, website accessibility, physical accessibility, and others. But today I will focus only on those accessibility services that concern the translation service. So with this piece of information, I think we can move to what we do. It's very important to highlight that the European Parliament is the only EU institution that is directly elected by its citizens, and it represents almost 450 million European citizens across all the countries of the European Union. So with that, it comes a clear responsibility to produce information that is accessible in order to allow access and participation to democracy. The Directorate for Citizens Language, the mission is to enhance access to content, and one of the milestones was the creation and publication of clear language guidelines in the 24 official EU languages. So they were first designed and then translated for the 3 different formats in which we work, for text, audio, and video. I would like to mention that citizens' language is a term that we use at Parliament to refer to clear language and to clear language principles. Finally, just to mention, the European Accessibility Act was launched, and so it entered into force in June this year, 2025. And without going into much detail, simply to say that it does mention that audiovisual products and certain other services and products must be accessible. So we would like to show our work so far and then future perspectives as well. So we can start our little tour with subtitling. We produce subtitles in the 24 official EU languages of pre-recorded videos for speeches, informative and policy videos, interviews, social media content, and any other kind of content that reaches our translation service. In addition, we produce subtitles for the deaf and hard of hearing, abbreviated as SDH, or also known as closed captions, CC, in other parts of the world. And we would like to mention this very specific project, the LAX Audience Award project. This project is a European project to promote cinema, European cinema. So every year there are 5 nominated films, and everyone, all of us, we can go watch these films in our countries and rate these films. In the past, we used to subtitle, let's say in standard or regular subtitles, the 5 nominated films, and only when the winner was announced, we produced SDH subtitles for the winner in the 24 languages. However, this year, in order to enhance accessibility from scratch, we have produced SDH subtitles in the 24 official EU languages for the 5 nominated films. And I will talk a bit more about this with some examples in the next slide. Now, what happens when we have live events like the one that we're hosting today, for example? I would like to mention the work of our colleagues from the speech-to-text unit who have developed a tool for automatic live transcription and translation into the 24 official EU languages, which provides multilingual access to in-house events. Currently, it's limited to in-house events. And it uses speech-to-text technology to provide caption, well, what can be known as captions in real time. In the next slide, we have some examples. Let's see. First of all, the 5 nominated films for this 2026 Lex Audience Award are It Was Just an Accident, Deaf, which was a Spanish production about deafness. So it was really interesting to produce SDH subtitles for this film. Then we have Christy, Love Me Tender, and Sentimental Value. Just to give you an example of SDH subtitles, I'd like to talk a bit about this screenshot of the film Close. It was a French production, well, it was in French, and it was the winner film of a previous Lex Audience Award edition. So on screen we have English subtitles with speaker identification, like on the second line, Sophie, or even on the first line, Leo, and information about what's happening. So he blows loudly, and it's a way to cater specifically for the needs of deaf and hard of hearing audiences. On this note, we provide subtitling services with a focus on quality and on a very professional, in a very professional way, by using different language guidelines. And lastly, oops, I clicked on the wrong button. We have here a screenshot of a user who is showing this automatic live transcription and translation for an internal event. The original language was English, and the text on screen, which appears timed, is in Italian. So with these notes on subtitling, we can move on to VoiceOver. VoiceOver can increase access to information because it can make a video available in a language that you understand. And in addition, it can be paired with subtitling to cater for different needs. We have here an example of a video which was originally recorded in French. It's about physical accessibility at Parliament's premises. So in a way, it was a way to train our translators on physical accessibility. This video was originally produced in French, and we voiced over it into the 23 other language versions. So on top of having the voiceover, we added intralingual subtitles. So subtitles, let's say, of English voiceover, adding English subtitles in order to make information available through different channels and to offer more alternatives. And then the last point of our services, we would like to mention transcripts, because they are a little bit different to subtitles because they are in a different format. So it's not dynamic, it's static, and it can help different people access information in a different way. So we have an example of a Luxembourgish politician, Astrid Lulling, and I'll move on the animation, which will be a bit of a spoiler effect, but I would just like to show you the first picture, where we have a video, and the transcripts that we produce are enriched because they also include information that is displayed on screen. So we have the main title saying the beginning of an extraordinary life, and maybe sometimes if we're talking about intralingual subtitling, we don't include those those bits because they would be redundant, but in transcriptions they can, and it helps making information a little bit more accessible. And finally, I would like to mention a very nice collaboration between the communication service of the European Parliament and the translation service. So it's about easy to read, and we produced the European elections from 2024 in easy to read in the 24 official EU languages. We have the hyperlink here in case you'd like to take a look. And we have also a little bit of a screenshot of the page, which shows the design and the questions and how it was explained. And of course, this is very important in order to offer accessibility, multilingual accessibility for democratic access to people with intellectual disabilities, but also to everyone, to a wider audience. Then we've seen now already a lot of services, including subtitling, live transcription, transcripts, easy to read, voiceover. So we may be wondering what's next, what's ahead. And the next biggest service is, of course, audio description. It's part of Parliament's strategy. And the idea would be to provide audio description for videos with strong visual cues to cater for the needs of the blind and partially sighted audiences, and to provide them in the 24 official EU languages. Partially related to this point is the project that we have on alternative text in the 24 official EU languages. So, for example, in the website of the Easy to Read, which is available in all the languages, all of the illustrations have alternative text, and in this way we treat alternative text from the point of view of translation. And I think this is very interesting. And well, overall, at Parliament, we're adapting to, but also in turn shaping the audiovisual translation landscape in Europe to make access to information more accessible and to engage with as many citizens as possible. I would like just to finish with our social media channels and some just hyperlink about information on traineeships and positive action schemes for people with disabilities, and a QR code to Parliament's translation service. And I think that now we're ready to open the floor for questions and answers. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Patricia, for your presentation. I feel like the European Parliament is really, as everyone here, as RTV Slovenia, for example, and the ENACT project, we are all moving forward to try to adapt to the needs of users and everyone that might need access to information, for example, and the wide range of accessibility services that you offer and that you are willing to start offering in the future really shows that. So right now, I think we have about 15 minutes for questions. If some of you have some comments or discussions that you would like to, things that we would like to discuss, we can take it. So we have a question. I think it's from Pilar Olero. Which is the pivot language for alt text, for alternative text? I think this question is for Patricia.
Yes, thank you. I just typed in the chat. I think it's in English, but I can check with my colleagues because I think that production tends to start in English. I'm not truly sure, but I would say it's English.
And the translation is automatic and post-edited?
No, it's not automatic. So the translation, so the alternative text is sent for translation for like by real people, so human translation. Yes.
Are there any other questions, something that we would like to discuss? I was particularly interested in how you mentioned that, for example, you have for the physical accessibility videos, how you use voiceover, but at the same time subtitles. This is a clear example of how we can use different accessibility services together to enhance access to information for different audiences. We have another question from Pilar. She's asking, do you have a Slovenian word for speed, which is the best? For Andrea, I guess.
Do you have a Slovenian word speed, which is the best? So how fast should we speak? No, we don't know yet. So we are discussing how the speed of speech, right? There is nothing done in this relation, so we don't have anything apart from the user references yet. If that's the question, if the question is something else.
Okay, she said thank you. Sarah MacDonald asks, how does the proliferation of AI influence the quality and accessibility of information, for better or for worse? And I believe that, for example, at RTV Slovenia, you are doing some testing with AI. So maybe you have already some thoughts about it.
So this can be discussed on the whole range of access services. We are doing subtitles for SDH, the automatic subtitles. We are doing some experiments with easy to understand language in the world, and also at RTV Slovenia, there is nothing really going on with sign language avatars, for example, but it is in discussion also. So I would answer for easy to understand language. The different pilots and different, so to say, different possibilities, like with different tools. We tried a lot of things, and we saw that always it's impossible to get a really great outcome without good prompts and good post editing. What Christiane Maas from University of Hildesheim said at the Clara conference, I think, is that with ChatGPT, and this is what we also notice, is that there is always a problem with the prompts, or how to prompt the different software. And she said that the best thing that is working best at this moment is just prompting with saying, you are easy to understand translator with 20 years experience, now please simplify this text, in opposition to giving it a full range of like rules or recommendations, like from Inclusion Europe or whatever, which just makes it a bit perplexed. And this is the same thing that we noticed. So giving it more like human-like, let's say, prompts, it's better than just coding as we are used to do, for those who are, used to coding just with different syntax and so on. So this is a new thing for us, and we are trying to see where this will bring us. There are different examples in Germany especially, and you can check those tools out because they are open for use on ChatGPT. I don't know, maybe if you want to do it.
Thank you. So I don't know if, for example, at the European Parliament, you use AI for some of your accessibility services, for example, the first draft of subtitles. You mentioned that you don't use it for transcription, but are there any plans to implement AI in the future? Do you happen to know?
I can reply. We currently use automatic speech recognition simply to have a faster transcription of the language of the audio, but we do not use AI for the subtitling of projects. However, there is what is known as key nouns and phrases, so we can also create glossaries and import those key nouns and phrases so that they populate themselves in the subtitles. It's not made in the same way as in translation software. So if it replies the question to the question, we don't use AI currently to subtitle, and so it's like a blank piece of sheet to translate from. I'm not sure about the future directions. I don't feel very confident to speak about that because I don't really know a lot about the future directions, but I think that well, in the sense, automatic speech recognition can be already considered as an aid, so it can be in the same direction to keep, of course, the human not only in the loop but in the center.
Thank you. Yeah, of course. I mean, I think both of you mentioned it, and I completely agree that, in my opinion, AI can be a great assistance if we, as Andrei said, you give it the proper prompts so that it works and it gives you the feedback that you need, and especially with human revision, it is a must, and this is something that we also discussed in the ENACT project when preparing a list of recommendations for news production, that humans have to be incorporated at the core. Thank you from Diana. Did I pronounce it correctly? Okay. Right. If there are no other questions, I think I can share my screen again. So I would like you all to thank you all for attending. To the speakers again for your wonderful contributions. Thank you for taking this opportunity, and for all of you who commented and asked questions for your insights. This was the idea of the seminar or the AccessTalks initiative, to create a space where not only we could raise awareness, but also to promote a cross-cultural and cross-country and sectoral space for discussion. Thank you, everybody. But before you leave, we would like to thank you, but also to ask you for your feedback. It is very important for us to know what you thought about it, about the seminar, about the presentations, and how it helped you view accessibility and the challenges and opportunities that we face when accessing information. So here you have a QR code that you can scan to do the survey, but we will also be sharing the link in the chat if you wish to answer. Anyways, you also have the QR in the presentation on the AccessTalk web page. You can take it from there as well after the seminar. So thank you, and thank you all so much for coming. Just before we leave, I would like to point out that we already have the date for the next seminar, which will be on accessible healthcare, and it will be taking place on the 13th of February next year. So we hope to see you again in future initiatives, be it for AccessTalks or for any other transmedia initiatives. While you are leaving, something that we usually do as a sort of romantic goodbye for webinars here at TransMedia Catalonia is that what we call chat brainstorming. So while you are leaving, you can share some thoughts or comments in the chat about how you felt during the session, how you liked it, and I will be reading them aloud while you leave. So thank you so much for participating. Hope to see you again, and bye-bye. So we have one comment from Sara. Thank you for the interesting talks. It is good to see the current work being done on its language. See you in February. That sounds really interesting regarding the next AccessTalks. Thank you for the interesting talks. Thank you for the presentations. See you next February. From Aida, who will be organizing the next seminar on accessible healthcare. So I think we can close the seminar now. And thank you all for participating and hope to see you again soon. I will stop recording now.
AccessTalks. More information at https://webs.uab.cat/transmedia/accesstalks.